Good morning and welcome to session 2 of our event at the Tunisia Pavilion, where we delve deeper into transformative innovations driving the energy and water transition. This session brings together esteemed experts who are shaping the future of sustainability through technology, standardization, and collaborative solutions. It happens that today, peace is on the agenda of COP29. And I take the opportunity to share with you a quick personal thought. Are wars still climate friendly? I will use this, yes. The projected emissions from the first 60 days of the Israel-Gaza war were greater than the annual emissions of 20 individual countries and territories. If you want to have the reference, I can share it later. It is at the bottom. If we include war infrastructure built by both Israel and Hamas, including the Hamas tunnel network and Israel's protective fence or iron wall, the total emissions increased to more than over 33 individual countries and territories. This is big. The carbon costs of reconstructing Gaza are enormous. Rebuilding Gaza will entail total annual emissions figure higher than over 130 countries. The ad hoc nature of these calculations point to the urgent need for mandatory military emissions reporting for both war and peacetime through the UNFCCC. Does it help climate change if we, citizens of the world, reduce our resources consumption, that is our personal effort, and eat less beef, while watching our governments support wars with mass destruction and killing for years in Ukraine and Middle East? Claiming justice and peace is not a favor we do to the oppressed. It is vital to each of us, to our institutions, to our planet, to our humanity. We may trust Trump to stop the war in Ukraine. Would this inspire peace in the Middle East? As we consider the facts, funds spent in war could make a better impact on climate. While waiting to see what COP29 would deliver for climate finance, let's enjoy climate change talents in action. Thank you. Actually, we cannot stop war from this stage, of course not. but we can stand in silence for a minute claiming peace for humanity and investment in climate finance and development instead of military industry and wars. Please. Thank you. We start with Mr. Kamal Ben Nasser from Nomadia Energy, who will present on the development of nanotechnology engineered materials that are revolutionizing the energy transition. Mrs. Nahla Abid from Bureau Veritas will then discuss the crucial role of standardization in building bankable energy transition projects, emphasizing how it accelerates progress. I guess she is on her way to the Tunisia pavilion. Afterwards, Mrs. Marie-Merle Kekebeck from Baker Hughes will share insights on operationalizing sustainability through innovation and strategic collaboration. We will conclude with Mr. Ahmed Slim Bouakez from WaterSec, who will explore innovative approaches to rebuilding trust and transparency in water management. Together, these presentations will provide a holistic view of how technological and strategic advancements can drive a sustainable future. Let's dive into these vital topics and engage in a meaningful dialogue on energy and water sustainability. Mr. Kamal Ben Nasser is CEO of Nomadia Energy Consulting and chairman of DAMORF. He has served as global president of the Society of Petroleum Engineers, chief economist at ADNOC, and Tunisia's Minister of Industry, Energy and Mines. Previously, he directed sustainability and technology at the International Energy Agency and held senior roles at Schlumberger over a 33-year career. He is graduate of École Polytechnique and École Normale Supérieure in Paris. DAMORF specializes in developing nanotechnology materials enhanced with artificial intelligence. Their innovation strategy uniquely integrates advances across mechanical, material science, electrical, and electronic sectors. Applications include clean energy advancement, nanotechnology enhanced materials, and novel geothermal systems, especially for super hot rocks and enhanced geothermal systems. Si Kamal, the floor is yours.
Sabah al-Khair, very good morning to you. It's a great pleasure. Thank you very much to the Tunisian authorities and TTU for the very kind invitation. Thank you, Munir, for this inspiring thoughts for about priorities for the world. I will talk a little bit about what we are doing as a startup in nanotechnology, and a little bit of background is that we started this company using some properties of materials which are very, unfortunately, not very well known to the public, but actually they are used both in nature and also started to be used in the industry. We are actually we are seeing a number of potential areas, which is not only in energy, hydrocarbon, low carbon energy, but also in healthcare, in consumer tech, in agri-tech, and so on. This is the team that started DAMORF, a very multinational team with people from different origins. The CEO is from China and US. The CTO is from India. And then we have Turkish and Tunisian representatives on the board. So just on nanomaterials, actually Mother Nature gives you very good examples of what nanomaterials can do. And if you look at butterflies and the beautiful colors of butterflies, actually most people don't know that the colors that you are seeing is just the interaction of some nano components on those butterflies and the lights, and this gives those beautiful shapes. So actually we are, and this is at the 500 micrometers scale. And we are also looking at nanocomposites, which have different properties. About 2 weeks ago, there was a big breakthrough in China, where they developed the first carbon nanotubes, which on microprocessors can accelerate the AI applications by a factor of 1600. So you can imagine what can be done with nanomaterials. So essentially, these are things that we are talking about. The microstructures that we generally talk about are in a few micromillimeters, and then we are looking now at how this structure could look like at some of the materials that we are using. The thing that we see on those nanomaterials, if you add them to steels and other materials, is that they increase significantly the properties. So if I take a steel with nanoparticles, you can have the hardness of things like diamonds. And so without obviously paying the cost of diamonds. And so you can actually give them very, very significant hardness properties that can allow you to operate in very, very different conditions. So in this case, you see some of the materials with the in green, which are much better than any steel or nickel corrosion-resistant alloys. So nanomaterials can really solve a number of problems. So we have been working in our labs in the US on a number of applications. In the conventional oil and gas applications, we have developed also tracers. These are nanotracers, which you can see through special lights. And these are actually starting to be used in the MRI, for X-rays, and to look at the structures of the lungs and other parts of the body. So these are materials that we have already started to use, and we have been commercializing that. So these are some of the materials that we are doing in terms of both sensors and composite materials. And what you see is that we have a number of alloys that we have developed, and we have also materials with what we call artificial intelligence, which are used to have behaviors that depend on the environment. So let's talk about geothermal energy. And geothermal energy is one of the cleanest ways of having energy. We are blessed by Mother Nature by having deep in the ground a very large amounts of heat. And today, 50% of the energy used in the world is in terms of heat. So what about extracting that heat from deep in the earth and using it to power the world? So you see here a little bit of structure of the temperature below the ground. So it goes from 100 to 200 to 300 degrees centigrade. And you see the different applications here from the geothermal heat pumps. So this is used today in many places around the world. To take an example, the airport of Orly in Paris is powered through geothermal energy. Then we go to other applications, which are the conventional geothermal, which goes to the 200 to 250 Fahrenheit, about 120 degrees. And then we go to the 700 Fahrenheit, 370 degrees, which are what's called the deep geothermal. So the big question is, how do we get access to those different sources of energy? So it's a little bit like oil and gas applications. You drill a well, which is the blue one, where you inject water or steam, and then it circulates, and then it goes back through the production well, and that well that water that comes back, or that steam that comes back, has much more energy taken from the ground. And the deeper you go, and the more energy you can extract. So these are some of the applications. The biggest problem today is how do you access these very deep energy? Where do you find them? That's the question that people have addressed. So this is what's called the super hot rock distribution, where you have what you have is the color in at what depth below the ground you can find those super hot rocks. Obviously, if it's below 10 kilometers, it's very difficult to extract because you need to drill wells to the 10 kilometers, and that's almost impossible. So really, we are interested in the 1 to 10 kilometers for the isotherm of 450 degrees C. So what you see is that in this region, North Africa is blessed with potential of super hot rocks that we could use to extract energy from the ground. You have also some places in East Africa and in the Middle East and North America and South America. And so there are the areas that could be targeted for one of the cleanest sources of energy, which is this super hot rocks energy. We see here in terms of cost of electricity between different ones, whether it's photovoltaic today in 2023 and projected to 2050. We see the ones with coal or gas. And what we see is that the advanced geothermal actually is quite competitive in terms of cost of energy compared to all the other ones. So quite a big potential in terms of cost. So what we have been doing and without going too much in the details, we are preparing for this new type of energy. We are preparing systems and materials that go to 400 degrees C. This would be the first one in the world. These are things like what we call perforations in the oil and gas industry, packer elements and this is using nanomaterials. And we have made a number of releases. 2022, we're actually working with our partner, Daido from Japan. We have developed the first patent, and this is supported by some of the foundations like Nippon Foundation, and we were an awardee of the Nippon Foundation. Some of the applications, I'm not going to get into too much details, is we can use some of those nanomaterials in health sciences, also in things like oil and gas, and actually they are being employed in the field. We also received different awards. We received one of the top awards in the energy industry, the ADIPEC award, with some of the inventions. There were 700 applications in terms of startups, and we were one of the top 3 startups in this area. So, as a summary, we have started from conventional applications in the oil and gas industry. We are using from Mother Nature some of the properties of nanomaterials. We are incorporating them into some of the advanced applications. This is to generate things like geothermal energy, which has almost 0 carbon footprint. And the blessing is that a country like Tunisia could have quite significant potential in terms of super hot rocks, as we have seen from some of the mines. So thank you very much for your attention, and please, if you have any question, I'm very happy to try to answer that.
Any questions? Oh, okay. Great.
No, thank you so much for the great Hi, my name is Zainab Benyamet. Thank you so much for the great presentation. So you delve a bit deeper into the advantage of using nanoproperties when it comes to whether heat transfer, energy efficiency, durability, and even the cost reduction. But I would love if you can expand more about what do you see the key challenge in terms of scaling up the usages of nanoproperties?
Okay, that's a fantastic question. Thank you for asking it. So basically, the knowledge has been limited to areas that are typically very closed, like the defense industry, because they were using them to develop new weapons and so on, and also the aerospace industry. So that's the first challenge, is getting this information, and thankfully we have the connections to take that. The second thing is that some of the materials, and I come back to the excellent points by Simonir, are used today in defense industry, and so it's very difficult to get access to those materials because they are used in wars like Ukraine and in Palestine for very wrong reasons. So getting access to those materials is difficult. But we are getting our ways, and we are working with manufacturers that are very much understanding the necessity to have access to those materials. Thank you. Yes.
Thank you for your presentation. It was quite interesting because it's a new topic for me and maybe some other people. My question is, on the long term, when you see Damov maybe developing and having more and more success, where can it be used in a day-to-day use? And second question is, as we're speaking about Tunisia, if we use the super hot trucks that we have, what can be the impact on the economy, on the energy using, maybe on a macro level? Thank you.
Okay. No, thank you very much for the question. So I would say the impact on Tunisia, first, it diversifies the sources of energy. We are blessed with energy from the sun, and this would be a complement. This does not need, in terms of footprint, the footprint that you would need for solar photovoltaic. You just need to drill that well in for the injection and drill the well for the production. And that's the only footprint. So you are minimizing the footprint. And then this is something that is very less disruptive to the environment. And what we have seen is that it's very much cost competitive to solar PV. So that's one advantage for Tunisia. We can actually develop some of those technologies inside Tunisia. We have the brain power. Tunisia was one of the actually first countries in the whole region that has developed a center in Borsadria, which is working not only on renewables, but also on micro and now nano components. So all that is a benefit for Tunisia. Yes, please. I think we need to pass the microphone.
Hi, this is Amal bin Yahmed. So from an emission perspective, if we look to geothermal energy and other form of renewables, do you think that the emissions are less comparing to, let's say, solar, wind? Because if we're going to drill, we know that drilling is not very environmental friendly, but we also know that extracting materials for solar energy also have a very high impact on environment. So you see, as geothermal energy is a better option, maybe, or yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Every technology that is developed now has a greenhouse gas footprint. If you take, for instance, solar PV, it takes into account all the materials that you have been using for those solar panels and so on, and to deploy them. One big advantage that you have with geothermal is that you use much less of those critical minerals that are very much in demand today. And so this is definitely an advantage on geothermal because you use much less of those. But we do always a whole life cycle analysis, which goes from what we call from wells to wheels, where we look at the whole footprint of the chip. Okay. I can repeat it. Yeah.
Maybe now, perhaps you wear more the hat of someone who used to work in public policy in Tunisia. I would love to hear, what do you see as like the key regulatory constraints in Tunisia for the uptake and the adoption of this technology?
So, and I was blessed actually in Tunisia. Thanks for the question. In 2014, we prepared the first comprehensive law in Tunisia. We passed it to the parliament for the enabling renewable. And recently there have been some updates on things like hydrogen. And so I think that we are reasonably equipped in terms of what we need are systems in place that encourage the developers and to actually develop those projects. Unfortunately, today, the renewable projects, solar, are a little bit in a slow mode in Tunisia because they were awarded, the 600 megawatts were awarded 4 or 5 years ago in Tunisia. And now they are pretty much stuck because prices have changed and we need to be adaptive and understand the reality of the market and move forward. Things happen, and we need also a legislation on carbon credits for Tunisia, which would help develop those projects. This does not exist today.
Hello, thank you for the insightful presentation. Actually, I have a question regarding the startup business model. So, are you more into B2G, and what is your business model and how you generate revenues from the technology?
That's a great question. We are actually a B2B, and we have chosen actually not to go to the classical investment schemes to have funding and from investors. We're actually getting resources from grants, and we are getting grants we've seen from Japanese, grants from the US, and these are funding the development of this technology. We remain the owners of the technology. We have filed something like 30 patents in the US over the last 4 years. And also, now in the commercialization, we are not really a manufacturing organization, and we perceive that at some point, we may actually license the technology to companies that have much better manufacturing capabilities. And this would be the next stage.
Thank you. عندك question?
Thank you for the brilliant presentation, and thank you for the research that you're doing that might be, giving us solutions someday that, fossil fuel is going to end at some point. So we're going to head towards the sun and the Earth's core. I was wondering now, for infrastructural point of view for Tunisia, would it be easier to go for this solution or for solar panels in terms of first base investments? Like, I feel like doing this type of forage might require a lot more investment from the get-go.
Well, I mean, I showed the cost. Thank you for the question. I showed the cost of the what's called levelized cost of electricity. So you include everything. And so what you see is that it's slightly higher than solar PV, but the big advantage of geothermal is that it is not intermittent. It is available 24 hours a day. You don't depend on the sun. It is actually something like a full time cycle. So that is a big advantage. So because in solar PV, you have I mean, the transmission factor, which depends on how many hours of light per day and sun. Here, it's 24 hours.
Okay.
And so this is what's called an electricity base load type electricity, which is available 24 hours a day.
Amazing.
So it's complementary. It's not a question of either, it's both.
It's diversifying
Yeah,
the
you need
sources.
to have a diversification.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Any other question? Thank you very much. I know,
Thank
Sikamel, you need to run to the Mediterranean pavilion.
Yeah. Going to pass it to my colleague Nahla.
J'ai raté la marcette قدام المخاط. Merci beaucoup. عايشك. Ok. ماشي سنة بس. شكرا.
Welcome, Marie.
Hi, Marie.
Okay.
Hi.
So, quick presentation of Mrs. Nahla Abid. Nahla Abid is Vice President of Strategy, Marketing and Sales for the CIF Middle East, Caspian and Africa at Bureau Veritas, which she joined in 2017. She has led initiatives in business development, marketing and sales with a focus on energy transition, hydrogen and renewables. Before Bureau Veritas, she spent 10 years at Air Liquide, holding roles in strategy and business development across Germany and the UAE. Nahla holds an industrial engineering degree from École Centrale de Paris and is fluent in Arabic, French, English, and German. The global energy transition from fossil fuels to renewables like hydrogen, wind, and solar is key to achieving climate goals. Beyond technology and investment, a solid standardization framework is crucial for creating bankable projects that attract investors' trust. This presentation highlights the role of transparent, universally accepted standards in de-risking projects and enhancing investor confidence. It covers impacts on renewable power, grid integration, and carbon credit verification using case studies and exploring standardization bodies like ISO and IEC. Public-private collaboration is emphasized for aligning standards with local regulations and accelerating the energy transition. Nahla, the mic is yours.
Thank you. So, je pense que ça fonctionne.
It works.
It works, okay. So, عسلامة الناس الكل أول حاجة. Donc, just presenting myself, I think Munir already presented me well. So, I've been in Bureau Veritas 7 years. I'm probably just explaining. Okay. I think it works actually. لا? Okay. So, can you hear me?
Yes.
كنت تسمعني. Okay. So, just in fact, giving small presentation about Bureau Veritas because I'm not introducing my company. So basically, we are a world leader in testing, inspection, certification, technical advisory services. We've been 200 years almost in the business, 87,000 employees globally. And we are actually working in various aspects of energy transition. So I think something which we're really famous for is certification, which is funny-wise represent only 8% of our business globally. But my presentation today is more focused into that area, which is more around standard, regulation, and their role into accelerating energy transition. So let me start. So probably just explaining why do we speak about energy transition? And I think we speak about COP. There's thousands of events happening currently around energy transition. And the main purpose, like probably to start with, we do see today a big acceleration into carbon emission. And the main idea of all of what we discuss, moving to renewable, working toward decarbonizing oil and gas industry and so on, is to reduce the emission of CO2. What we've seen actually recently, that if, like even with what was happening, like if le cas à Tunis, si on n'a plus de pluie. Donc c'est partout dans le monde en fait. With the water scarcity, we're getting actually less and less water, so less and less hydropower as well. So we see as well, on top of all the challenges we face, which is lack of technology or non-bankable technology and so on, we see as well water getting less hydrocarbon power, and if we see actually just within actually 2023, we saw that like we got actually 3 times more emission from energy production, which is linked to the reduction of hydropower, linked to the lack of water. So if I may say, actually all is linked together. It's an ecosystem. We emit more carbon. We're getting less rain. we're getting less hydropower, we're getting less renewable, and it's going back actually. So just to highlight, it's quite challenging, and we need actually to work all together. And I think was well explained by Munir about this role of public, government, like even institution working together into getting a proper framework and to accelerate energy transition. So, and here we speak a lot about scaling renewable energy. So my presentation is a bit focused on renewable, but I would say it's not just renewable. We speak about scaling renewable, about decarbonizing oil and gas sector. We're speaking about adapting new technologies still, because we will not anyway move away from oil and gas within a day. It will never happen. And that's why we call it a transition. We should actually reduce emission from existing, I would say, ecosystem or existing energy production to go slowly and replace it by more alternative, better energy solution, which are emitting less carbon. We're seeing here actually also, like what we are seeing recently, that there is a huge shift from fossil fuel to renewable. And interesting facts coming from IRENA, that we got 86% of global power addition, which was led by solar and wind within 2023. What is also interesting here, I would say, wind and solar started a few years ago, but what has a bit to change as well, and that's why we will speak about bankability a bit later, we're having now renewable energy, which is becoming more affordable. Technology is becoming more de-risked. It's much easier to adapt. So we're seeing people moving more toward wind and solar because it's also becoming more affordable. And if I compare now cost of production of electricity from renewable or wind, it's starting to really compete with its cost producing it from fossil fuel, and even within GCC countries, which are having a lot of oil resources. And yeah, when we see actually renewable, there is a big part, which we speak a lot about standardization, because we need to reduce risk. We need to boost actually the bankability and to build investor confidence. And there we start speaking about role of standard, role actually of getting subsidies and so on. And we'll, like my presentation will go a bit through that. So why do we need standardization actually? First thing, we need to have a universal accepted benchmark. So if I'm developing a window project, whether I develop it in Middle East, or I develop it here in Baku, in Caspian, or I will develop it in Europe, I need to have a minimum standard to make sure that the way I'm developing or the way I will operate my plant after would be the same across sector. Like we speak today a lot about lack of skilled resources for renewable sector as example. I want to develop a project. We're actually also in the business of manpower supply. A big challenge we see today is like you do not have a lot of skilled people. Once you have actually standards for which you can train your people according to those standards, you can guarantee that the person that I deploy as example in project in Baku can be as well deployed for another project which I'm developing, let's say in Dubai or in Germany as example. So this is also another part. We're speaking about benchmark, and having standard will help you to benchmark not just actually the risk fact of the project or like benchmarking actually the credit, the carbon actually emission of the project, but even actually making sure that you have the right skills of personnel which are acting into that project, which help as well reduce this risk linked to a lack of skilled people as well. So we speak about here as well having consistency and of course trust. So if I'm an investor, I'm investing in a project, we see a lot now of banks coming to us saying, okay, I have 2-3 projects. I have like, as per my global target, I need to reduce my carbon emission, and they committed into investing more into renewable. So how do they compare that project A is better than project B? There is also like the same benchmark, the same idea, and there also we need a standard to be able to compare, I would say, apple to apple as well. So what are the benefits? We spoke about reducing risk, enhanced bankability, I mentioned it already, and scalability. So as I mentioned here, like I can duplicate. So if I'm actually as well, I'm a developer, like Masdar, Aqua, or whomever we're seeing here, I'm developing a project in Middle East. I have a standard. It will be much easier for me and much cheaper when I'm replicating my plant into another place. And this is based actually on standard I would have developed and applied in my first project. And of course, quality assurance, which is a field actually where our company is working a lot, because also we have to make sure that we're meeting the right standards when we speak about quality, when we speak about technology performance and sustainability. So key area impacting. So we speak about renewable power generation. I spoke already a bit around it, and I'll show a bit later some of the standards which might be applied. I think it would be interesting to go a bit through them. We speak about grid integration. A big challenge today, if you hear a bit what's happening in the Caspian Sea region, there is a new announcement which was made about connecting the grid from Baku to from basically Azerbaijan, Uzbekistan, even going up to Kazakhstan. They're even speaking about connecting that grid to Europe. So a point actually today, many people hear about the carbon border adjustment mechanism. So electricity is under CBAM in Europe. So let's say if I'm connecting grid from Azerbaijan to Europe, my carbon footprint of the electricity coming into that grid will be actually challenged, because actually I'm producing here electricity which much higher carbon intensity than what is expected in the European Commission. So here we speak as well about going back to the standard, and we speak here about carbon calculation, carbon footprint calculation as example. We speak as well about a lot about carbon credit verification. Today, many people are checking about how can I have also carbon credit helping me to get my project bankable. And we speak a lot of standards in there, like I don't know if people who followed in the COP, they have actually yesterday launched the latest actually carbon trading market in Saudi Arabia. They made an option actually already, so it's already put in place, but it's not the first initiative. Like if you saw in last COP, it was announced the same in UAE. Unfortunately, that carbon trading platform in UAE has been closed recently. So now we're really having a new one restarting. And the idea is also to say, okay, we're restarting the same initiative. How can I build on what I learned from previous initiatives who failed to make sure that I can continue as well? And here there are a lot of standards which can be applied. There is CORSIA, we'll go a bit later about it. This is around aviation fuel, but we speak as example about having, verification process. We speak a lot about ISO 14064, which is a way actually to measure your GHG emission and a way to verify it. We're speaking more about life cycle assessment as well. So if we speak a bit more about CBAM regulation, we're speaking about an environmental product declaration of a product, we'll be more focused into other standards which are more, not just checking carbon, but also checking water consumption and all, like, I don't know, land aspects, land usage and so on, which are also impacting it. And then, of course, environmental safeguard. And here as well, there is a lot of standards which are also assuring that we're meeting as well social standards. For people a bit following hydrogen, they were very nice, actually, a very nice emission, like which was passed in German TVs, and they were comparing NEOM project, which is the only really bankable hydrogen project, or the one which is really starting, to a project which is happening in Africa. And one of the biggest critics to NEOM is saying, okay, we're building it in Saudi, but what about social? Well, like you're putting people living in a camp far away from civilization, like, which social standard are you applying in that? And today, when we speak about all the hydrogen auction as well happening in Europe, social impact as well, it's part of the thing that they are checking once they want actually to finance the project. Let me just move if it works. Okay. Yeah, sorry, let me move back. Okay. Sorry, one minute. Sorry. Okay, so here is just showing a bit some of the sustainability reporting framework which are already existing. So we hear a lot today about the GRI standard, which is the Global Reporting Initiative. And now most of the companies which are developing their sustainability reporting, they're using the GRI standard. It's actually like making the company comparing where they are standing in their ESG journey, and it's based on sustainability value creation. We're speaking as well about SAB, which is a standard based on financial creation. And we speak as example about the CDP, which is basically a carbon declaration project, helping company actually to declare their carbon emission. We are part of the company using the CDP standard to report. And what is interesting in here, there are already 33,000 companies globally using the standard to report actually their capital value, their environmental and climate impact, and specifically their carbon emission. We have, of course, various others. So there are also few which are really focused on assurance and transparency and accountability as well. So what is the role of standardization? So basically the idea is to minimize risk in renewable energy project by ensuring a proper performance of technology. So we speak about technology risk. So we have the EIC 61400, which is, as example, a standard used for wind to ensure that the technology are meeting the performance and reliability required. We have some financial risk. So here is clear standard reducing uncertainty, providing access to funding. We speak a lot here as well about green bond. And a lot of companies, when they invest, or when you're developing a renewable project, there is mechanism there is company which will be there as a lender technical advisory, and they're helping actually banks to make sure that what the project they're financing is really following what they committed to as well. So we speak about regulatory risk. There is just a typo mistake here. So we see a lot of compliance with the ISO 14001, which is the environmental management system, which is becoming more and more requested. And of course, environmental and social risk. And here, as I said, there is various standards as well. I have a slide later showing some of them. So why do we speak actually about a bankable project and why it's important actually? We have actually to have a project which is sufficiently de-risked and which demonstrates a high probability of achieving financial, environmental, and technical objectives. If you, within COP, actually, you will hear thousands of events happening around hydrogen, around CCUS, and so on. What makes those projects not happen as much as we would like them to happen? Particularly, I'm living in Dubai. If we see in Middle East, we have a lot, or even here, we have so far a lot of companies, like they're all actually countries which are relying heavily on oil and gas. So you cannot tell those countries you switch your oil and gas asset and you switch automatically to renewable. The only way to make them really having a proper energy transition or reducing their carbon emission is to go through adapting new technology. So we spent, like yesterday, it was announced by Baker, I think Marie is here, that they just sold actually a technology to help SOCAR reduce flaring. You will see, like, and yeah, ideally, those technology exists since a while. And why they are now easy to adapt? Because they have demonstrated that they are there, they're bankable, people knows if they invest, is it feasible? The project will be really developed according to certain standards, and it's moving. We speak a lot today about hydrogen. The biggest risk we're seeing today with hydrogen, and we work with thousands of developers. When you speak to many developers, they will tell you, okay, we have made our feed, or I'm still in feasibility study, so I'm asking why aren't you moving forward? And it's very simple, there is no offtake. So why don't we see an offtake for renewable or even like blue hydrogen? What is really lacking there is a standard behind it. So if I speak about European Commission, we have this renewable directive, which are giving actually very strict standard in order to have the hydrogen sold to Europe, kind of like committed to be like according to those standards. How can I make sure if I develop a project that I'm actually able to sell my product to Europe? I have to be certified according to those. But there is, as of today, no certification framework. There are initiatives, there are various companies who launched a certification framework or standard, but today, as of today, they are not yet adopted by European Commission. Another side, if I move back to Middle East where I'm based, you speak about all these oil and gas companies there. A lot of them are now moving more into CCUS project, and many of them are willing now to actually like get more money into valorizing their product being a low carbon. And there is another side. This is also a political side, and we'll see it a bit later. We speak about like blue carbon. If you go to Europe, nobody wants to speak about a hydrocarbon-based hydrogen. We move as example to Japan. They are putting very, I would say, critical like carbon footprint, which you should comply to. So people are having money, they're willing to develop, but at the end they tell you, okay, if I develop that project, my project will cost me X million, but at the end I'm selling my production for the same price. Why should I do it? And here we speak as well about how fast, the faster we can develop standard, which would help developing regulation, the faster we can have those people committed and willing actually to invest. If we take here example actually of the CBAM regulation, which was recently adopted in Europe, moving back to Middle East, you will see a lot of petrochemical players today starting into applying those technology. Why? We know that by 2026, petrochemicals will be subject to CBAM as well. So my biggest business and my biggest, I would say, off-taker are in Europe. So if I don't move now fast, I cannot afterwards sell my product to Europe, or I will be paying much higher carbon tax that it doesn't make sense for me to continue doing things as I'm doing it today. So yeah, as I mentioned, like few things about bankability, the government role, government strategy, like, yeah, I'll move further here. Yeah, so we spoke as well here about public-private relationship. So as I said, as example, we see the Green Deal, they promote a lot the usage of ISO 50000, 14001. There is also a lot of private sector role, like if I go back to the hydrogen, you have here the Hydrogen Council, which is making a lot of lobbying, getting actually companies working together. You will have companies like ours, which are more into, I would say, knowledge of standards. You will have actually government. You will have as well a lot of IUCs company, energy companies, and so on, which are working together into developing an ecosystem to be able to move forward. And then, of course, we speak a lot about a global partnership. And this is quite interesting part as well. According to the Offshore Wind Energy Organization, we saw that the EU and private sector collaboration led to 25% increase in investment in offshore wind, which I think like it's factual. If we see the only project which is being developed now in NEOM, it's also a collaboration between actually NEOM, which is behind it is PIF, like public. It's Aqua Power, which is half, I will say public, half private, and a product actually. And when you see behind it, how did it came possible? I have an off-taker which committed to off-take my product, and I have an investor who committed to invest. And we see here again, actually, even within a project-wise, if you have this whole chain working together, you can make it bankable. So this is a bit showing, some example or where we as Bureau Veritas are interfering. We speak a lot about the 17 SDGs, And what is quite interesting, actually, we do have, if you go actually through standard, when you check every SDG, you have various standards which you can use in order to show your commitment toward that standard. So today, actually, companies, when they're going into making their sustainability rating, having more certificates showing their commitment, it helps them to do it. I think another point which is probably interesting, I believe Mona might touch more on it tomorrow. If you speak about all of this rating for sustainability as well, there is also, it's still being criticized as well. You know, today, a company which is already emitting zero will be actually having a less rating because they are not making a lot to reduce because basically they have nothing to reduce versus a company like Aramco or ADNOC, which are, say, an oil and gas company with heavy emission, but they're making a big step to reduce. So those are, I guess you'll be going through it, but I think it's also like interesting to highlight that even standard, we can still criticize them actually, they're there, but you should also see them a bit with, I would say, critical point of view. So here, yeah, just some example actually, we speak a lot now about gender equality. There is some standard for gender equality. We speak about deforestation, we speak about environmental, so as example, ISO 14001, very like common standard used everywhere, but people use it now to show, yes, I'm committing that I'm doing something for the environment. So how could we make it better actually? So we, as I said, standard would help the adaptation of new technologies. We speak about having a standard as a driver of innovation. So as example, like in order to innovate, in order to adapt new technology, we speak a lot about subsidies. But in order to get subsidies, actually you will be measuring how far I'm going actually, how far I'm committed to what I'm committing for through some standard as well. So it's also helping to get actually like a driver for new innovation and of course adapting new technologies. Adapting new technology, I think, is both ways. We have standards which are helping you ensuring that new technology are really applied in a safe manner. And you have other standard which is helping as well de-risking those new technologies. It's more de-risking the financial risk by giving actually proper framework to get, as example, those companies applying them, getting carbon credit or getting subsidies and so on. So that's it. Any question?
Any question?
Okay, you start. No, please. Okay. My question, so thank you very much for this insightful presentation. We learned a lot. My question is that, what do you see like the key difference perhaps across region in terms of the development of and standardization of this protocol? And therefore, like, what do you think the extent to which the government really plays a critical role in terms of creating this enabling environment for the standardization of these protocols?
Okay, so like what we see actually today, like when we speak about all sustainability aspects, I think the region which is leading it, and everybody would agree with it, is Europe. So we have a lot of European regulation being developed much faster. So we speak about CSRD now protocols, which is more to check your sustainability criteria. We're starting speaking about the CBAM regulation and so on. So in terms of leader, Europe is really leading. Then we have other regions, which if I see as example, hydrogen and those other new technologies like Japan and others, like in the other side of the world, we see them as well starting applying their standard. You go actually to US, their standard, they have been, I would say, standard being developed. We don't know yet with Trump coming back how things will develop, but like what we do expect as a company and even wherever you speak to actually that standard or like development of things pro-climate in US might be declined a bit the next day, but however, they might see more LNG coming. So it's probably bringing more energy. If we see as example today, a big challenge we have as well in Europe, okay, they develop a lot of standard, but if you go back to the fact, when they stopped getting, Germany stopped getting gas from Russia, they restarted operating coal plants. So in a way as well, I think you have the theory, but you have also the, I would say, what is happening on the ground. So as a US, we don't see them now, at least that's what we do believe, actually, we will not see them, I think, leading development of standard, but bringing back LNG might help reduce emission by reducing, I would say, people going back to coal. That's at least, I think, might be a fact, but the one which is really leading development is Europe. Between, I would say, Caspian, Africa, Middle East, I see them more as a follower, if I may say. Doesn't mean they're not developing their own initiative. Like there is various initiatives being developed, and now they're positioning themselves as being leader as well in the energy transition. So basically, yeah, they might not develop standard, but if you ask me, probably the first companies who really announced having blue hydrogen or blue ammonia and so on were in Saudi and UAE, as example. So they might be not the first into developing, but I would say they have the money if they want to deploy faster, I believe.
Thank you. So speaking about the CSRD regulations in Europe, I was going to ask you specifically for Bureau Veritas, what have you seen, if any, kind of increase in the importance of certifying? Is it emissions specifically? Is it LCA? Is it like, what have you seen kind of an uptake in, because now that it's regulation, before it was voluntary. So
Yes.
people would do their best and it was okay. Now regulation, there's, risk involved with that. And so what have you seen in terms of interest and increased interest?
Now, I cover Middle East, Caspian, Africa. If you ask me about Middle East,
So yeah, so
just giving you my view on
Yes.
it, like globally, and it's quite interesting because we've been discussing the same with my colleague yesterday. Now, when we came here, told him, for me, the best day is today. It's Energy Day. This is my big player, which are really acting into sustainability. Global-wise, and particularly Europe, the best day for him was yesterday when we spoke about finance. Because actually in Europe, I think we are seeing more the other side, which is more talking about, all the social aspect and so on, which is really being pushed. If I go back to Middle East where I'm placed, we do some of certification based on those, is getting more. But if you ask me, the largest volume I'm seeing currently, it's really into the carbon services. So we speak a lot about LCA, which wasn't the case before. Like now, companies, as I said, a bit afraid of, CBAM is coming, what should I do? They start asking us, what is EPD? What does mean environmental product declaration? Why do I need an LCA and not just use the GHG emission verification standard? So we see it being more, if I can say, trendy with the Middle East. It's more the carbon side. Caspian is a bit similar. If you go to speak to Sukar as example, we got quite nice discussion. For them, they're even still speaking about leak detection. So they're really starting from far away. So I would say the biggest impact here within Caspian, Middle East is really focused into this side, which is how can I reduce emission? Is the E side, the environmental. The social and governance, I see them more into mature areas, such as Europe and so on. I will see them much more stronger in that.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Nahla, for the presentation. Very holistic, and I love the approach. I have a question that is probably outside of the content of this presentation. It's the nature of the business itself.
Yes.
As Bureau Veritas, I know that your core business is TIC, and you advocate for standardization and certifications and inspections, right?
Not really. It was the case. Well,
It was, so my question is coming to that. So basically, let's say historically, you've been advocating for that, right?
Yes.
And then I see a trend right now in the tech industry that they're trying to kind of embrace consultancy, embrace, advisory, trying to put solutions out there, because we cannot limit ourselves to building the foundation through standardization. Standardization are good to put us on track.
I agree.
But when it comes to proposing solutions, then I have to go beyond my current role play and then try to put an advice out there, which create a critical position for us, right? A conflict of interest. So how do you navigate that through as a tech industry in general, and in particular, Bureau Veritas?
So if I go back to our history a bit, we started in 1828 by classification of ships. So we started by putting our own standard and helping basically vessels to go navigate safely, if I might say. So we always say about if we testing wise, it's more our lab activities and so on. But even within our testing, giving example even backward, when you are testing the oil condition actually for a transformer, you kind of give a report explaining client as well if his transformer is good or not. So we've been more famous by the testing side, inspection, certification. But even within our inspection services, indirectly, we've been giving those support to clients. So giving you a bit some history of the company, if I see Middle East particularly, we've been very strong in health, safety, environmental, social impact assessment studies. So we are actually more seen as HSE consultant in various sectors rather than only into testing and inspection. So when I joined the company 7 years ago, to be just simple, like my team, my role and my team role was how can we move a bit of being more really the person supporting just into certification or inspection, giving like manpower for that, or bringing just someone to check if you're having the ISO 14001 well applied and so on, to how to move a bit further and be there more as developing solution for our customers. And basically, as exactly what you said, if I just go and certify clients, okay, nice, you're certifying, but what about before the certification? Who could help me in that side? So we saw more and more actually trend, which was more also requested by our customer, telling us, okay, you can do this, but you might help me into making these studies because you have that knowledge as well. So typically today, we're having a quite strict segregation, I would say, of responsibility. So as example, if I operate in a project as owner engineer, typically many jobs, they will ask you into design review, which is basically a design review. You're not really designing. So we keep always that arm, which we say, okay, we offer consultancy, but it remains technical consultancy. We would never go into financial consultancy because it's not our field. And most of our consultancy is based on a standard that you compare to. What we saw as well today, when you speak as example about all of the new era, CCS, hydrogen, and so on, there is no standard. So there is a need to create standards. So based on our knowledge, we created as well our own standard. And today we are certifying based on those standards. As long as it's voluntary, actually, and we call it second party, you could create and audit versus a standard that you develop. So it's more, I would say, at the group level, we have a team which is very strict, reviewing contract by contract, where you go. And what we offer to our clients sometimes, let's say, if I support a client calculating his carbon footprint, I could never come and certify it after. So in a way, we choose where we'd like to play, but it was more, if you ask me, a request from customers coming to us, rather than like, that's how I would say it kind of developed naturally, actually. And if you ask me, it's the most interesting part of the business, to be very honest.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We have another question.
Okay, so I'll ask a question and then pass you. Okay, so I have a question regarding how standardization can like boost innovation.
Yes.
I don't agree with that. Let me share my opinion, because
Yes,
adding this layer of regulations and standardization is adding a blocking point for like innovators. This is my opinion.
Yes.
So I totally agree with you when it comes to scalability and that and how to scale like the project.
Yes.
I'd say outputs, but in terms of innovation, it adds like, for us startups, we cannot handle like these extra costs, this extra layer that you are building. It's more like benefit to like big companies, especially in Europe. So what's your opinion about that?
I tend to disagree. Giving you example, actually, like I worked before joining Bureau Veritas, I worked in the biofuel business. Okay. And in that time, I was in a time in Germany where most of the people has stopped using their biodiesel plant. Why? Now, in a time, there were regulation which came in Europe, whomever is developing biodiesel plant is having huge subsidies. So we saw companies, even very small innovators, small companies who started investing because it was bankable. Actually, you could get money because you could get subsidies. The day they stopped having those subsidies, we saw 50% of those plants who stopped. So in a way, actually, when you put, I'd say if I'm speaking about innovation, if I have a framework which can help me getting subsidies, it would help me boost innovation. I agree it might be an extra layer, but let's say, when I used to work in an engineering company, and I always remembered our process people saying, we developed this amazing thing. And our manager was looking at it saying, okay, nice, but for how much would you sell it extra? So anyway, if you innovate, you have a market behind it. So typically, those standards should be helping you bringing your product rather than actually doing the opposite. If we speak now as example, and I speak about Middle East, I see a lot of customers going into really reducing their carbon footprint. Why? Because you have the CBAM regulation coming. I'm selling to Europe. If I reduce, it will bring me a good, I will say, advantage commercially, because I will say my product cheaper than another product which is coming from another part of the world with a higher carbon offtake. So I think it can be mitigated. I think it's between both. I agree it might be a hard layer, but ideally it should be there to help and support the energy transition. But speaking about hydrogen, I also agree with you. I see today all of this regulation that they are putting, like most of developers stop developing because they don't know what to do, and they are saying, okay, to make it non-bankable. And that, I think, also it's quite important. That's why we speak about private and government partnership. If you have only government developing, see people which are sitting in parliament having no idea about what's happening in the ground, we finish by having those regulations which are very stringent, which is really blocking actually development and innovation. Michael.
The mic is here.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Nala. Quick question is, you mentioned it about the positioning of BV.
Yes.
How do you see your involvement in new technologies,
Yes.
knowing that how do you make inspection or certification or standardization if you are not involved early in advance in specification, in engineering, etc.? For example, today, how can you handle these aspects for projects based on artificial intelligence or cybersecurity? How can you move to the final stage if you are not involved within the first part?
And that's the interesting side. As I said, we are currently 87,000 employees, and we kind of acquire company every day. So today, as a fact, we have acquired already a few years ago a company called Secura, which is a cybersecurity expert company. And we just have announced, I think 1 month ago, another acquisition into cybersecurity stage. So just to answer your question, we're also growing ourselves into those areas to be able actually when we develop or when we work with people to have the right expertise in-house to support those people while they go toward that direction. By giving example of AI as example, we work a lot in preventive maintenance. I remember we got a project with one basically plant where we started getting our historical data with what they have using an AI model to help them prepare their inspection plan later on. So we even ourselves, we rather use this new technology and adapt it while developing and while actually diversifying our services. We speak also now about digital twins. So giving example, we started moving into drone, like the first, I think, drone inspection we've done in GCC was for a big petrochemical plant in Kuwait. And actually, like what differentiates us, because everybody can have a drone, but we bring this inspection expertise. So we know what we should look at. And then we take those data and we analyze them to give them a proper asset integrity management program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I hope we'll have a chance to further discuss what
With
you
a pleasure.
mentioned about leak detection and
Yes.
preventive maintenance. I'm
With a
very
pleasure.
interested.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you so much for the brilliant presentation and for everything you presented so far. What I was wondering was, you were talking about certifications and standards and all of that. How can we avoid having big corporations just checking boxes and not following those standards? Like, how can we be certain? It's maybe something you already have on your website, I'm sure. I was just wondering right now when I was looking at your presentation, how do we avoid having big corps like corporate America and other corporates just checking boxes, you know, and actually following those standards and avoid ruining our planet further?
And now to be like my personal view, you can't avoid it, personal view, because it's separate. You know, but like if I speak about facts, as example, when when a customer comes to me and said, you know, your auditor was very tough, say, yeah, it's good, he's doing his job.
Yeah.
So as example, when I bring someone to audit a company, theoretically, the more non-conformity I give them, it means I'm doing a great job. I'm making sure they're really following the standard. I give them non-conformity, and I come back after to audit what they applied for those non-conformity. If we speak about more into project developing, we do a lot of design review. Like we actually blocked one project of FADNA getting developed because they made with us the social, I think was health environment social impact assessment. And we discovered that if they develop their project in that area, it will impact actually some bird migration in that area. So sometimes actually, if you do your job right, you could help avoid.
You can tackle those.
Exactly, but to be very honest, I don't think you could really tackle it, but I do believe if everybody works together and everybody put his best, you kind of support helping to avoid those. But standards will always be, like I would say, scandals will always be there. Whatever you do, unfortunately, actually, I don't believe you could avoid it. I believe it's human nature, to be very honest.
Yeah.
This is my personal view, not BB view.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
So I think Marie is coming.
we still got time for.
We still have time for
I
questions.
think we still got it. Does anyone have any questions?
Maybe let's continue. It's
Yeah,
very interesting. I fully agree with you on the need for standardization. Fully. Why? Because you talk about interconnecting electricity network, interconnecting roads, interconnecting everything.
Exactly.
How the hell we can make sure that you are going from end to end without getting a wall in the middle of it?
Exactly.
So the standardization is of course a key element. So maybe just to confirm.
I think we're done.
I had so many questions in mind. I'm just having a blank.
Silly.
Yeah.
Not happened. I think Marie is not yet ready, I guess. It happened.
Bravo, Nana.
Bravo.
Yeah.
Go back.
Thank you very much. We are going to take a couple of minutes break before continuing. Ouais.